all these beautiful cars, absolutely gorgeous with the shiny paint job, and they have all the latest technology. You're probably thinking they'll probably run forever, right? Well, guess what? You'd be wrong, because many cars won't even make it 100,000 miles, no matter what you do, no matter how seasoned the mechanic is, and no matter how much spare parts you have in your garage. There's no way these following 5 vehicles will make it over 100,000 miles. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. Let's cut right to the chase. Even with seasoned mechanics like that, there's just some vehicles, they're so problematic, they're so expensive to fix, and they're so just poorly designed that it doesn't even matter how good you are, they'll constantly fail and leave you in a lurch. So let's just dive right in, and I'm going to share with you the first vehicle that you don't even have a hope and a prayer to try to make 100,000 miles, and that vehicle is... Range Rovers, of course, get the glory of all of this attention. Of course, they do have some great headlights, and of course the grills are very prominent, and who doesn't feel sexy cruising down the road in a Range Rover? I mean, you've got these great shark fins looking grills here, and of course you've got lots of chrome along the side, beautiful alloy wheels. Of course, as you circle around, you've got LED lights on this beautiful Range Rover. Of course, they have this wonderful overhang there. Obviously, even Ford loved this because the new Ford Exploder looks almost identical to that. Beautiful soft touch entrance on the back as well as the front, and inside, heaping in the lap of luxury with all this wood trim, high quality leather, and as well nice amenities throughout. But what kind of problems are you going to get with the Range Rover? Well, where should we start? Guaranteed it won't make 100,000 because you'll run broke. Even the King of England can't keep up with the repair bills on these vehicles once they start shitting the bed. But let's look. Steering racks, a problem. They get loose, they get clunky, that gets expensive. Pulling the e-brake, there's a little electronic e-brake. Sometimes that locks up, sometimes it doesn't work at all, but it does result in sometimes squealing and screeching at the back wheels. Now, of course, these do sit on air ride suspension, and how many Range Rovers have you seen where they're actually sitting on the rump because the air ride system starts to fail, and that is a very pricey piece to fix. You have compressors and airbags and accumulators and the electrics and relays and pumps and all of that goodness means that there's a lot to potentially go wrong, and they're not Honda prices, they're Range Rover prices, so you can imagine what that costs. You can also get oil leaks, coolant leaks, pretty much from everywhere. Differentials, engine, cooling system, all can leave a little puddle and a stain underneath that vehicle. Electrics can be a problem. The big sunroof on top. We've got heads-up display are a possibility. Of course, window regulators are common for these. And even if you can believe it, there have been cases with water ingress or leaks within the vehicle. And the engine. Well, sadly enough, there are engine problems in some cases, depending on the particular drivetrain you're talking about. But timing chains do get gobbled up on certain engines. And there was a class action lawsuit for a certain generation a few years back. Direct injection injectors and fuel pumps can be a problem. Intake manifold. And there's just a whole plethora of issues. The rear differential as well can lock up, burn out, and be a problem. They are electronic and they are very expensive to fix as well. Keep up on your fluid changes and make sure that you remove the screen so that it doesn't plug off and that it doesn't build too much pressure. Allow it to breathe. That is a problem for some of these vehicles. And so while they're literally some of the nicest, most luxurious SUVs on the market today, you literally have to be rich to be able to maintain these. And as a result, most owners who drive these until they're 4, 5, 6 years of age find out the hard way. Once warranty expires, they don't have the funds, the means, or the resources to stay on top of this vehicle. And you really should consider turfing it down the road before that if you really need to have one of these. Well, the next piece of junk on the list that you won't make 100,000 miles, and it doesn't matter how good of a mechanic you really are, it's this Chevy Cruze here. Yes, a whole plethora of issues, but let's give you a quick walk around and show you the poor quality control that you can expect even on the outside of the vehicle. Let's look. Clearly they rust, they don't last very long that way. Be sure they got nice little chrome tips on them, but there's no sunroof on there. Pretty basic looking wheels. Old school looking taillights on these vehicles for sure for the Chevy, and this is actually the Premier. Looking down there, nothing too exciting or extravagant. And the interior does look fairly modern, but it actually doesn't wear up all that well too to hard use and abuse. They do have some interesting headlights, I will add. Of course, and they do have sort of an aggressive looking stance right there. But what's the problem with these things? Well, other than the fact lots of coolant leaks, you can almost expect guaranteed to be topping up coolant. $10 a jug guaranteed. Water pump's a problem. But the big thing is, do you know there's some cracked piston issues that have been evolving with some of these Cruzes? Absolutely terrible. As well as a transmission. Harsh to shift, sometimes jerking, sometimes surging, and sometimes slipping altogether. Yes, catastrophic transmission failures through and through. These are literally some of the worst vehicles GM has ever produced. And I even rented one a few years ago in Vegas when I was on vacation. And over the week, it felt like the vehicle was losing power every single day I drove it. It seemed like it was down on power, down on power. Open the door and it dropped a quarter inch, just poorly built. And just when you thought you found a fun-loving little car, we have the Fiat 500. Absolutely great and fun to drive, for a little while anyway. I mean, who wouldn't like to rip around in this? I mean, with today's day and age, with the fuel costs the way they are, it's guaranteed to be cheap on fuel to run. Great for parking downtown. If you have a lot of tight parking accommodations, you can almost double park these vehicles without too much trouble. And they are quite cool looking. Look at those great taillights. How about that 500? That looks sharp on this little Fiat. Love the way they look. It's actually a cute little car. Little carboned up tailpipe there, and those great wheels right there. Chrome looking little handle, and a cutesy retro looking little mirror on there. How about the little bug eyes on the front? Pretty cute little unit. Clearly the paint doesn't last very well, and neither does the interior. And look, we have an automatic, so that could be a problem as well. So as cute and perky as these vehicles are, they have their host of issues, and they won't last very long. They're just not built to do that. As much as we wish this would go 152, 300,000 miles, not a chance. Won't even make 100, but here's why. Front ends get clunky and bangy. That gets costly to fix. It is an Italian car, as well as steering. That is also a problem. Starts to get grinding and clunking in the steering, inconsistent feel. How about if you get the auto? Bad news. Stick with the manual, but the manual's not safe either, because the manual, the clutch springs crack and split. There's issues in the clutch itself, and it becomes a very expensive proposition to start replacing clutches in these particular cars as well. Of course, you have coolant issues, wear and tear problems, and a lot of the hardware within the interior just does not hold up with any significant amount of time. Now that in itself isn't particularly costly and going to limit the vehicle to 100,000, but it's all of the nickel and dime repair issues that you're going to expect with these Fiats. They just won't last. The engines are weak, the transmissions are weaker, they leak, they break, and most people that are going to buy these just won't be able to keep up with the repairs or want to keep pouring money down that money pit. Sorry, Fiat 500. Great try. Not quite. And the next one actually pains me to say this, because there's a lot of BMWs that aren't very reliable, and this one's no exception. But this one is actually really fun to drive and is actually worth keeping, just like the E60 M5. What we have here is the E92 M3 right here. Beautiful car. There we have an E92 M3. That implies that it's the two-door version because it's the E92. And this particular model is a 2009. Absolutely beautiful. What we have is a hardtop that retracts on this M3. Beautiful mirrors. Hard top that pulls back. You can see the seams in it. Flips down into the trunk space here. Great taillights on this BMW M3. And 4 chips on that particular exhaust system on this car. They also have these amazing rocker panels that slide all the way up there. They flare out to the hood that actually has this bulge in it, and as well as those 2 flaring nostrils. Absolutely aggressive looking car. You'll notice because it's an M3, it has the flares on the front. Beautiful car in many aspects. Right here we've got that beautiful mirror. Look how it connects at the top. And these wheels are awesome as well. What about the interior? Well, these interiors in BMW generally wear very, very well. We have a light colored interior, and it actually doesn't look that bad. You'll notice the shifter on the console would imply that this is a DCT, double clutch transmission, and some of the earlier generations within the BMW world. Find a good one of these, and they're more or less a keeper. If you like performance cars and you just want to rip around for the weekend, great. But they won't make 100,000 miles, and here's why. Well, this is a 4-liter V8. It's naturally aspirated, it's high revving, absolutely amazing car to drive. But with that S65 V8 engine is the same as the S85 and the V10 engine of the M5, and that's tight rod bearings, poor oiling, high revving engine makes for a bad combination. And what you end up with, throttle actuators that fail, and they're about $2,500 a piece, and they're very difficult to get at. They're below the intake plenum. And more importantly, you actually have to pull subframe, and it's a lot of extensive work to get underneath of this car to replace all the bottom end rod bearings, because that is your failure point. Anywhere from about 40 to 70,000 miles, you can expect to change rod bearings. Essentially, the bottom end of your engine is worn out. It's a great car, but unfortunately, it's for those that love the car and they need to have it, but it's not going to last 100,000 miles. And here's another one for the winner's circle. It won't make 100,000 miles because they're junk. And it's a sad state of affairs, because Nissan, once Renault took over, that's when everything fell apart. They used to be a solid brand, and then now they're not. But here's what we've got, a Nissan Altima as another vehicle on our list. Take a look. And they've got those weird, funky headlights, very basic looking on this Nissan. Obviously, somebody's cheesed this out. Of course, down here, you've got alloy wheels, and somebody's done further with the cheesing. And then you go down, and it's a very, very basic look Nothing too exciting. It's just a very bland looking design overall. Of course, here you have those strange see-through taillights on this Nissan Altima. Of course, we've got the 2.5S. That's the 4-cylinder in this version. No sunroof, low quality interior, and there's just really nothing to write home about with these vehicles. They're not all that well made. If you took your 6-year-old kid and you said, draw me a car, they just drew something generic, this is probably what they would draw. That's what it would look like. But it's not just about the styling. We're talking about cars that won't last no matter what you do to them. I mean, these cars here were known for head gaskets. Yes, they were blowing head gaskets. Unfortunately, we're also talking about a car from a generation where transmissions would fail. Of course, the generation of CVTs, the continuously variable transmissions, were notoriously bad and rotten, and they wouldn't let these vehicles run very long. Sure, you could keep extending the life of these things and keep pouring money down as a money pit, but that's where it becomes just too strangulating and too much of a nuisance. And for anybody who's really got common sense and cares about their dollar, they wouldn't even bother with the Nissan Altima. It won't make 100,000 miles no matter how good your mechanic is. And if those models aren't nauseating enough and upsetting to the stomach, then definitely check out that video. It's going to help you select some of the best, most reliable cars that will literally last forever. Hope to see each and every one of you guys on the next one. We'll catch you real soon. Bye-bye.